Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Well, hey there, it's Scott Groves with the On the Edge podcast, host of the On the Edge podcast, owner, I guess, of the On the Edge podcast. I don't know. I'm here with my trusty companion, Chris DeRosa, who's in the booth, making sure everything gets edited and sounding correct. And this is just a quick solo cast explaining why another podcast, right? It seems like everybody and their brother does a podcast. A lot of people in the industry in which I spend most of my time, which is the mortgage industry, they're starting to do a lot of industry-specific podcasts. This is nothing like an industry-specific podcast. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to have to distance myself from my industry or the company I work for to make sure that I don't get myself in trouble. But a lot of people, myself included, my wife, who's upstairs sleeping, Chris, who's doing all the editing work and the audio and making sure all of this happens, other than me just talking, is they're asking why the podcast, right? Why do another podcast? Why take on another project? I'm a pretty busy guy. I work 40, 50, 60 hours, sometimes 70 hours a week with rates this low in the mortgage business. I have a couple great people that help me keep that business on track. I also spend my Sundays hosting a coaching business for loan officers. We do a 10-minute call every morning, and I batch record a lot of information on Sundays during what kind of should be free time or watching reruns of The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones. And then this is kind of my third side project, doing this podcast, which I'm pretty passionate about right now. We'll see if it lasts. The average podcast peters out before about 17 or 20 episodes. So we'll see if we make it that far. Our goal here, based on the equipment that we've purchased and the commitment that I've made to Chris, is we want to try to do 100 podcasts and see where it goes and see what the response is. And to answer the question, why am I doing this or why is it interesting? I think the first thing that comes to mind is that I have a lot of great friends and a lot of great business associates and a lot of great clients who I work with and a lot of great referral sources who I work with. And I spend a fair amount of time at cigar lounges and on long walks talking with friends of mine on the phone. And I've gotten to the end of these conversations before that were 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours, 5 hours, sometimes if you're smoking 2 cigars in the same night. And I'm like, man, I really wish that conversation was recorded, either because there was just some gold in there, or it's something I would like to share with my kids when I was older, when they were older. And I realize how many great conversations I've had over the last 10 years about politics, about business, about relationships, that I'm just like, man, I really wish that was recorded, or I could go back to it, or my kids, when they get older, could go back to it. And so I think just a little bit of like fear of missing out, that some of these great conversations are just a fleeting moment in time. I'm like, well, why not invite some friends over, invite some business associates, invite some of my clients over, and have some of these great conversations. You know, one of the beautiful things about working in the mortgage industry, specifically in California, is we see all the crazy ways that there is to make a living. You know, I like to tell the story about this gentleman I did a home loan for who lived and worked in Santa Monica. And his job, and I, of course, will never give out any fiduciary responsibility, or never give up my fiduciary responsibility and give up too much personal information about a client from the mortgage business, but he made an insanely good living. And what he did for a living is he did professional adjustments, like very high-end adjustments of people's road bikes. So if you were a cyclist and you wanted to up your game or make sure you didn't get knee pain or ankle pain or back pain, you would go into his shop, he would sit you on this apparatus with your own bike, and you would just start pedaling. And he had cameras and computers and swivels and dwivels and all kinds of equipment that I can't even explain. Dwivel, I think, is a word I just made up. And he would measure you, and he would take the arc of your downstroke on your bike and the seating, and he would change the seat post, and he would adjust the pedals, and he would adjust your feet, and all this crazy stuff that would just make riding for long distances, which a lot of cyclists like to do, make it more comfortable. And, he charged a couple $100 per session or per adjustment, if you will. And he made an amazing living. And I got to do a loan for him. And just having, a half-hour conversation with him about how he got into that and how he grew the business and how he markets, I was like, man, that's a fascinating business conversation about a way that this guy turned his passion into a job successful enough that he could buy a beautiful house on the West Side. And things like that have just made me thought, man, I should be recording in some fashion some of these conversations. The other reason why I think this podcast is going to be successful, or why maybe I'm kind of uniquely qualified to have these conversations, is I just have a really unique cross-section of people I'm friends with. So grew up in more of that Reagan Republican type household, went to the Army and probably became more conservative, got out of the Army and realized that a lot of what I think and a lot of my beliefs are more of libertarian leaning. But let's be real, I'm a red dot, if you can call it that. I don't know if libertarians are red or yellow, so I guess I'm a yellow dot. I'm a yellow dot in a deeply, deeply blue state, in a deeply blue county, in a deeply blue city, right? So most of my referral sources, most of my friends, most of my clients are going to be somewhere left of center, all the way to extreme left progressives, cheering on the Antifa group that was taking over city blocks in Seattle or Portland. And I have to have good conversations with them. I have to have good relationships with them. So it's very funny when I go through my Facebook feed, for example, which tends to be an echo chamber. My echo chamber is pretty diverse because I got a lot of friends that are on the left, slightly left of center, way left of center. I've got a lot of friends that are ex-military, ex-wrestling buddies, ex-buddies from Boy Scouts, people that I grew up with in more conservative households. They're a little bit right of center or far, far, far right of center, right? And so I think just that diversity of working in the real estate field and the mortgage field and previous Army experience and where I live geographically, it just forced me to have a little bit wider perspective on what's out there, right? And I'll tell you, I was having a conversation on this podcast that'll be released soon with a drag queen, a gay man, and he was saying, yeah, even here living in LA, at least once every couple of weeks, I'll be walking down the street and somebody will yell out some epithet out the window, something very vulgar and offensive. And I'm like, really, man? 2021 in Southern California, in LA, there's still people rolling down their windows and yelling at you about being homosexual or black or Asian or short or a woman. Like, that kind of shocks me, because in my diverse circle of friends, people are more respectful than you would think. And that's just not part of my reality, right? And so I want to talk to these people, and I want to talk to all these interesting people that are part of my life and part of my circle of friends and friends of friends and clients, and just get their perspective to see, like, hey, what are you dealing with? What are the things that I'm missing in my catalog of thoughts? What are the political beliefs or personal beliefs that are maybe really entrenched in me, and I need to hear the other side of the argument or the other side of the debate? Because I think that's something that's greatly missing in America, right? Like, I know there are politicians right now on both sides of the aisle that want to move farther to the center, right? That want to have conversations with people on the other side of the aisle, that want to vote a different way than their party would. And they're just not allowed, because we become such this outlier of angry, opposing viewpoints and talking points and emotionally connected beliefs instead of factually connected beliefs, that the two parties, if we're talking about politics, they've had to move farther and farther to the right and the left to satisfy their base, which I think is just the most horrible thing ever. So just looking to have great conversations with people, that some that agree with me, some that are probably my mirror, and some that are just adamantly opposed to most of the things that I would believe, and that's okay, right? That's where good conversations come from. The other reason we're doing this is because my good friend Chris needed a side project, right? He needed a job. He came to me and he's like, hey, I've got some ideas on what we could put together. I think you can do this. I can do this piece of it, and we can build something pretty interesting, and one day maybe we monetize it, and that'd be cool. Again, super blessed to have worked in the mortgage industry in 2020, in a year when most industries found themselves struggling. The mortgage industry was thriving. And if we've got a little bit money left over at the end of the day as a family, why not reinvest it into a side project or employing Chris, who's doing a great job and working really hard? The other reason why I feel like I need to do this is because when I do like a values exercise, right? So I've taken a lot of personal coaching, personal development, business coaching. When I do a value exercise, and I know this is an unpopular thing to say, because what you're supposed to say out loud is that I value my family the highest, and then I value my health, and then religion, and then business, and then country, or whatever it is you're supposed to say. When I take these personality tests, or when I think really deeply about my values, one of the things that I value most is variety. One of the things that I value most is variety. I like new projects. I like trying to take on, new athletic endeavors, boxing, and then jujitsu, and then scuba diving, and then trail running. I like to try different things. And it's probably why myself and my team have been really successful in the mortgage business, because the reality is even the most complicated file, frustrated client deal that's going south, maybe you're on that deal for 45 days, maybe. Usually it's shorter than 30, but maybe you're on a deal for 45 or 60 days, and then you kind of move on to the next project or the next file or the next loan. And I think that variety and that changing of the guard every 30 to 45 days, changing of the client base, changing of the rollover of the pipeline, I think it's one of the reasons why it's made me successful in that industry. And so if I know that this is one of my values, and I know I'm going to be smoking cigars anyway, right? Oh, just spilled a cigar all over my little notepad here. If I know I'm going to be smoking cigars anyway and having a cocktail once in a while with friends, why not pull variety into it and have conversations that we just happen to be recording so that, one, we can share them with anybody else that might be interested, but two, I can just kind of scratch that itch of my value and my desire to have variety in my life. And then number three, as we just showed with this spilled ash on this cigar, because I'm not smoking it right at the moment, I really enjoy smoking cigars. It's some people meditate, some people go for long runs, some people check out and watch movies, some people listen to a podcast, which I do sometimes when I'm smoking a cigar. But for me, that relaxation after the kids have gone to bed and I've spent some quality time with my wife and it's 9 o'clock at night, I'm like, don't really need to watch reruns of Friends or Seinfeld. One of the things that I like to do is just think, read, talk about politics, read about politics, have conversations with friends about politics, smoke a cigar. And the best way that I could figure out to smoke cigars in the garage, I will never be able to smoke them in the house, but the one way that I thought I could get away with smoking cigars in the garage, because it's a little chilly outside, even here in Southern California, was if I told my wife that we were going to build a podcast studio that I was going to have to smoke in, because that was going to be our little catch, that like we smoke cigars while we have conversations. And so the most efficient way to smoke more cigars and smoke them indoors was to build this podcast. So that's a little benefit.
What are you smoking tonight, Scott?
Oh, yeah. Well, tonight I am smoking the Padron 1926. We're going to try to smoke a different cigar on every episode here for the first 20 or 30 episodes, because for those of you that are not big cigar smokers, there's probably 900, 1,100 brands out there of cigars. Every cigar maker probably rolls 5 to 10 different cigars in 4 to 5 different sizes. So there's probably 30,000, 40,000 unique cigars out there, if not more. I don't think we'll get through all those, but we'll get a couple in every episode. And yeah, just I want to have some positive conversations. I want to have some generative conversations, but I also want to talk about some stuff that frustrates me, right? And right now in modern America, modern politics, civil discourse or uncivil discourse, uncivil, that's the word, right? I think that's the word. Yeah. Uncivil discourse on social media, it's just the hypocrisy and the double standard and the newspeak from everybody. It doesn't matter. I do it. You do it. Every political party does it. It's just that frustration of like the what about, right? The what about metric of like, well, yeah. Our party sucks at doing this, or my company sucks doing that. But what about this other thing that you did, right? And I don't really want to go there. Maybe there's some comparative analysis that needs to be done. Maybe we're going to get into some great conversations over the next couple of months with people that need to bring up things that others are doing or that people on the other side are doing. But I think there's just a possibility to have a really great conversation with everybody, learn a little bit from it. We'll chop it up. We'll slice it up into small 5 to 7 minute bits. And then, if you're really interested in a topic, you can dig in for 2 to 3 hours and listen to some of the longer form podcasts we'll be doing. But that's the reason. I'm Scott Groves, and this is the On the Edge podcast.